A look into the life of a real Renaissance man. Fonville Winans wasn't only an amazing photographer, he was a pilot, an inventor, a chef, and even more. No one has ever captured Louisiana's people, spirit, beauty, and soul quite like photographer Theodore Fonville Winans, known to most simply as Fonville. He had that rare ability to capture the essence of anything through his camera lens. His son Bob says his secret was seeing into the soul of everything around him.
One of my dad's favorite statements is that I fall in love, a little bit in love with every girl I photograph. There's something special about every woman, and I find that something special, and a little bit of me falls in love with her when I'm taking her picture.
He was a keen observer, listener, and believer that the lens never lies.
And that's why a lot of his portraits were quite successful. He photographed one man, and he said, something's not real right. He said, what do you dress with normally? He said, well, normally I just wear a khaki shirt and khaki pants. And he says, I'm impressed. He said, do you ever wear suits? He said, oh, I go to church about once every other month or something. I'll wear a suit there. So nobody knew the guy in a suit, and he's getting his picture made in a suit. So Dad said, look, go home. Come back tomorrow with your khaki pants. And he came back in with the khaki pants and stuff, and Dad took a picture, and boom, it was great.
Fonville's work is internationally known, with exhibits over the last 50 years in London, New York, and other major cities.
Dad's work was exhibited in Europe. We had a show in France, and
did you get to go?
I got to go.
Wow.
And it was sponsored by the French Photographic Association, which you know is the oldest photographic association in the world. That's where photography was invented, was in France. And they collected 5 of my dad's pieces for their permanent collection in France.
The largest collection of Fonville's work is here at Hill Memorial Library, part of LSU Library's special collections. It's safeguarded along with other treasures, like this book from the 1700s Napoleon had made. More than 10,000 Fonville negatives are stored here in the stacks. Archivist Mark Martin says it's significant on many levels. One is the visual record of land and space,
which are, I think, very important for seeing where we were and how we've grown.
Another is his political portraits, some posed, but others, like the ones in this archive box of Fonville, an avid cyclist, giving a custom-made bicycle to former Governor Edwin Edwards at the mansion, show a candid, more personal side of politics.
They had one made for Governor Edwards, and they delivered it to him at the new governor's mansion, and sometime in the 70s, judging by the suits. This is part of that thing about the value of the collection, is that it's not just portraiture, it's not just weddings, it's not just celebrities. There's a broader scope to it that makes it, in a lot of ways, I think makes it more human, you know, more interesting to a wider audience.
Fonville's career started clicking in 1931, the day he bought his very first camera for $30. It was a 3A Kodak. He was living in Texas, 20 years old at the time. He had always had several jobs, but after reading Lafitte the Pirate, he yearned for adventure along the swamps, bayous, and waterways of South Louisiana. So he restored a $25 boat, bought a second-hand, hand-cranked movie camera, brought along 2 friends, and set his sails on making a movie. He hoped to make a fortune, too. He didn't grow rich, but his love for photography grew richer. After living on Grand Isle, he then had the grand idea of going to LSU. While there, he started the first campus newsreel.
He made movies of Huey Long standing on the stump passing out money for people to go to ball games, and the train loading up and pulling out and all that sort of stuff, and showed the films on campus every month. And all those films have been lost.
Oh no. A lost treasure to many.
Wish more had survived because they were intended for a particular time and place and an audience. And that kind of thing really brings in the time. You get to see what people expected as the film portrayed it.
He also took still photos for the campus newspaper. Bob says that developed into a job with big connections.
He had a lot of good breaks. Just before he went into business, he was a state photographer for Governor Lesh.
His portrait work was soon in high demand. It included Governors Huey and Earl K. Long, Jimmy Davis, and Edwin Edwards, just to name a few. The politically connected would quickly be followed by the socially connected. Mardi Gras royalty, publishers, architects, beauty queens, actress Joanne Woodward, and chef Paul Prudhomme. But throughout his studio's 50-year history in downtown Baton Rouge, the call he got most often was to shoot a wedding. Many wouldn't get married without him.
And many of the weddings of that day were based around his schedule. You know, if he had a wedding booked for there, then you don't get married there. You wait and you get married, you know.
He's credited with revolutionizing wedding photography. First, by how he took the pictures, then by how he printed them.
He did a lot of sort of behind the scenes casual shots. It identifies him and his style.
You could identify him too in a picture or two.
This is after the wedding, but that's him.
Oh, that's great.
So this is the thing where Fonville was shooting the wedding, but he always has at least one shot where he's in it too. So.
Amazingly, for family and friends, they can order Fonville wedding and portrait photos now. Bob gave LSU the property rights. He kept the copyrights. LSU only charges a nominal fee.
And they can get either a physical print or scan and do with it as they wish.
Are they delighted when you're able to say, yes, we found it, it's usable?
Usually very much so.
This oyster man sitting on a stack of shells is one of Fonville's most famous. He took it the morning after shooting a double wedding in his beloved Grand Isle.
He saw Vizier, the oyster man, sitting outside of his house shucking oysters, you know, at like 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, going to town on these oysters. Quite an iconic thing.
Fonville is an icon himself. Books have been written about him. The New Orleans restaurant Grand Isle is framed around his work. Center stage is another famous photo, his Grand Isle bus.
And there's a double exposure. If you look real close, you can see somebody, the faint image of somebody running in front of the bus.
Fonville was intrigued by more than photography. He was a pilot, musician, artist, gourmet cook, and inventor. He held 4 patents, one for an automatic developing machine.
In my entire life in the darkroom, I never had to develop film. I just put it in his machine.
That's incredible.
We'd go home and come back the next day, and the film was dry and ready to print.
Fonville charged $2 for a wallet-sized print like this. He said it was like having his own mint.
He would tell me, he'd say, "Son, I'm making money here. Think of this as dollar bills." You know?
Printing his own money.
Printing his own money.
Legally, though.
Legally, yes.
Hidden here in the Fonville archives, Mark was shocked to discover something everyone thought was lost forever. His first film, Cruise of the Pintail. LSU, realizing its intrinsic value, paid to restore it. Now Bob is using that, along with Fonville's journals and pictures on that very trip for a new, bigger project. You can watch a few minutes of it now on YouTube. It melds Fonville's rich talent with the adventurous, full life he lived.
When he was basically on his deathbed and I was visiting him, he says, "I want to tell you, son," he says, "there was nothing in this life that I didn't do. I had a very happy life, and I was able to do everything I wanted."